Hi, everyone. I'm Ed Garston, and welcome to episode 97 of Tales from the Beat, where we look at PR and news from both sides of the scrimmage line. And I'm thrilled that this episode, my guest is somebody who's definitely been on both sides of the line, of the scrimmage line, has jumped over, I think, as aggressively as the Lions' defensive line lately, which is different. I mean, can you imagine? Can you imagine saying that? Something positive about the line. But my good friend that I've known, I think, since mammoths trod the earth, Eric Mayne, who just retired for after how many years from Stellantis?
I was at Chrysler FCA Stellantis for 12 years,
12 years.
and before that, I had 30 years in newspapers and radio and online media.
Well, it's very modest. Eric is one of the foremost automotive reporters. And I know when you retired, I saw the billions of compliments you got, and people who expressed their respect for you on LinkedIn and other social media places where you announced it.
It was very humbling, and I will say I consider it a real honor to be part of that press corps.
Yeah,
When before I was in general news, and I didn't really know that subculture existed.
yeah,
I knew they were like sports writers.
right.
They were a group. Never considered that they were auto writers,
Yeah,
and I found them to be passionate and talented,
absolutely.
and really wonderful to be around.
Oh, I totally agree. I got transferred up here from Atlanta in 1989 when CNN still had a bureau here in Detroit. And all of a sudden, I was sort of thrust into this auto culture. And I'm thinking, well, I mean, I know how to drive a car, but I don't know anything about the business. And, Eric, it was really so amazing how welcoming everybody was. As long as you didn't act like a hot shot and said, I'm new and I need help, everybody would be kind to you.
Oh, absolutely wonderful. And welcoming is the perfect word. Absolutely.
Yeah, although I always tell the story about when they used to still do 10-day sales long ago,
Yes, yes.
and we had to do an interview at Ford with their numbers cruncher. I won't say his name, but he was about to retire and was feeling kind of crusty. And he said to me, "Do you know anything?" I said, "No, no, I'm new. You're the first guy I'm interviewing." He goes, "Well, you'll have to excuse my language." He says, "Listen to me. Just shut the fuck up. Listen to what I say and report it accurately, and you'll be in good shape." And then he started laughing at me. He goes, "Did I scare the shit out of you?" I go, "Well, yeah." And then we got along just fine. And after the story went out on the air, he called me up and said, "You were okay. You did exactly what I said."
Well,
And
that was funny. That reminds me of a time. So I covered Ford for a while when I was
yeah,
at Ward's Auto, and Jack Nasser was CEO at the time,
uh,
and he was kind of gruff, and I think he could be intimidating. Some people felt intimidated by him.
yeah.
He was uh, a very certainly an aggressive
Mm.
executive. And I remember people asking me, like, Art, doesn't that guy scare you? And no, like, he hasn't threatened my life. So, you know, and I said that because,
Yeah,
I had moved from general news to automotive. And
yeah.
during my general news career, I did 5 years investigating outlaw motorcycle gangs,
Mm.
threatened my life on a regular babasis.
Oh boy.
So being in the auto world was like a vacation. It was wonderful.
Yeah, it was it was just a little bit scary, but it really didn't take long to kind of get absorbed into the culture and really enjoy it. And to this day, I mean, I think that was the luckiest thing that ever happened to me was falling into the auto industry.
I agree. I have to thank Elisa Priddle for
Yeah,
she's the one who hired me over at Ward's. We worked together at the Windsor Star. That was my first
yeah,
journalism job,
yeah.
and brought me over to the U.S. side, and it was truly a turning point in my career. I experienced a lot of things I never could have hoped for
Yeah.
otherwise.
She and we both know Alyssa very well, a wonderful, wonderful person
Yeah.
and just a brilliant journalist. So, okay, I know that I know my side of the story. We were at the Detroit News together. You were covering right Ford, and I was covering GM, and we left the same day. And I won't get into why we did,
I think it was. I think I left on the Friday and you left on the Monday. It's something like it was. But I
something
think
like
we
it.
gave our notice like the same day. So
Right. I know we.
unbeknownst to each other too. So
Yeah. Right. We had the right. Didn't we have sort of a joint goodbye thing at the Anchor Bar? Uh,
oh, yeah, yeah,
yeah.
that was a great
It was a
news
great.
bar, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yes. So, I mean, I know why I made the switch, but then that was in 2005, and then you made the switch many years later. But what motivated you to do it?
It's a great question. I was approached by Chrysler at the time, and I hadn't ever considered going over.
Yeah,
And then I started thinking that I've always been curious to see if I could pull it off. You know,
sure.
I watched from the other side of the fence and wondered if I could do it.
Yeah,
At the same time, too, at that time I was at Ward's and I was writing a lot of powertrain stories. And that was something that intrigued me. And they said, you can come over and you can be the powertrain guy, just do powertrain all day long.
wow.
And that was attractive because Bob Lee
Yeah.
was the head of powertrain there, and he
Hmm.
was the father of the modern Hemi,
Yeah,
and just a fascinating individual, immensely talented, gifted. And I thought if I can work with this guy like on a regular basis
yeah,
on a topic that I love, how bad can you know and um, still stay employed in the U.S., which is a big deal if you live in Canada because you get that
right.
exchange rate when you go back across the bridge.
Yeah,
So
right.
it was a win-win all the way around.
Sure, sure. I remember Bob well, and yes, he was brilliant. And you think is how many really smart, brilliant, and ahead of their time people were at the company at the
And
time.
the other thing, and I used to kid him about it. I thought he was probably the toughest interview in Detroit because he would not go off message. You
Yeah,
know how you try to ingratiate yourself
yeah,
and maybe get off topic and then swing back and slip in a question that they'll, inadvertently answer. And then you get something nobody else has, which is the
right.
goal, right?
Yeah.
And I could never do that with him. One time at the Detroit Auto Show, I thought I'm going to get him off his game. And
Uh-huh.
they said, "Where do you want to do the interview?" And at the time, they were talking about the big deal was the folding the table that was in the minivan,
Oh
you
yeah,
know,
yeah,
and the seats could turn around and there was a table stolen
right.
something.
Yeah,
And I said, well, let's do it in a minivan. And of course, he had to bring his PR people,
yeah,
So it was like three guys in this van. I thought I'll make him as uncomfortable as I can and try to get him off his game. And
yeah.
we were sweltering in there. And
He's,
no, he stayed on the
he
script
did.
the whole
Yeah,
time. He was
yeah.
great.
He's a tough guy. So, on that same note, what did you find was the I guess the most challenging sort of part of jumping to the other side, where yes, you as a reporter you get to challenge and even be a little impertinent to these executives, and now all of a sudden you're on the payroll with them.
I had no trouble being impertinent with them when I was on the job or
Yeah,
challenge them. That I figured that's why I was there to
right.
provide my counsel. The difficult thing was the I guess they're largely legal requirements of confirming all the information that you do. When you're a reporter, you and
Mm,
I know
right.
you're going to get it right. You spell it right. You double check your facts. You get multiple sources. I
Yeah,
know I have this right. It's down. I got it.
yeah.
You're ready to go. And then and then you give it to your editor. They trust that you've done that. But in the corporate culture, it goes through so many layers,
Oh yeah.
and sometimes, sometimes, sometimes lawyers forget that they're lawyers and
Yeah.
decide that they're editors, and it's like, no, 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 no. It's written that way for a reason. And then
Right.
you get into, and then it becomes a very protracted debate. And I had a dear friend of mine that I worked with at the Windsor Star who went to work, who also made the leap, and he worked for the Prime Minister's office.
Oh.
And he told me about the approval process there to get something,
Mhm.
even the most mundane, thing like an obituary.
Yeah.
Well, he's the guy's dead. You can't.
Oh, no.
There's no way to get that wrong.
Yeah, right. Yeah. That's
So,
funny.
I mean, that's the part I found. It was the lack of autonomy,
Hmm.
uh, because in the news business, I accept the responsibility to get it right. They
Right.
trust that you'll get it right.
Right.
You put it all down and you go and you move on to the next story.
Oh, yeah.
But there's so many stakeholders, and I don't begrudge that
Mhm.
stakeholders have a legitimate claim
Yeah.
to the company and the messaging,
Hmm.
but that process was the most frustrating for me.
Yeah, I found, that, and also just the sort of the how do I put it, sort of the culture where I know that I walked up to someone to ask him a question one time, and he said to me, "Oh, did we have a meeting on the calendar?" I said, "No, I just have a question for you." And he goes, People don't usually do that." And my boss actually chastised me and said, "You don't just
Oh,
walk up to people." I said, "Oh, well, I think you do."
that's very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I encountered some of that. I I kind of ignored it, and got
Yeah.
it done anyway. But
Right.
it is interesting. What I did discover was uh, like just the reporting skills that you bring to that job
Hmm.
really help you
Yes.
to find compelling narratives inside the company. Like I don't know how many good stories that I came across standing in the coffee line,
Yeah.
at Tech Plaza. They had you
Yeah.
remember they had like kind of a little espresso shop there, and
Right.
there'd be like a line, and I would always engage the guy in front of me or behind me,
Yeah.
and 9 times out of 10, it was something fascinating,
Oh, yeah.
and that's all it takes.
That's,
Is do you remember in a newsroom? This is what I missed about being a reporter.
yeah.
Newsroom is the most democratic work environment on the planet, I thought.
Right.
Uh, you could go nose to nose with your boss on a disagreement, and then when it's over, it's like, you go for lunch now? Yeah, let's go for lunch. And then,
Yeah.
you hang out at the press club after.
Right.
Uh, and that kind of open sharing, I think,
Hmm.
is absent in the corporate culture,
Yes.
and I miss that. Uh, I forget where I was going with this, but it was,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. No, no.
I did want to say that anyway. I did want to say that while I was
Yeah.
here.
Yeah. No, no, I know what you're saying. And sometimes old habits die hard. I know the very first auto show that I worked after joining the company, and it was still Daimler Chrysler at the time. And they had a deal with Volkswagen to produce Volkswagen's version of the
Oh
minivan
yeah, right.
in Windsor. And there was a little scrum with Wolfgang Bernhardt, who had been with Stellantis, but now was with Volkswagen. And I was writing the blog. That was my first job there, because it was to write the blog for the PR guy. And so there's a little scrum, and I just asked him, I said, "Oh, is your version going to have stow and go just like the Chrysler version?" And he said, "Oh, yes." Well, my boss pulled me aside and said, "You just made news. Don't ever make news again while you work here." I said, "Oh, sorry. It's part of me." And luckily, the other reporters that were in the scrum with me were not very astute, and nobody reported it. So I didn't, of course, either. But I learned my lesson, that things were a little bit different when you're on the other side of the line. So the other thing I want to ask you about, Eric, is having, once you're a reporter and you're on the other side. I know I had feelings about this, but how did your relationship then with reporters change, and what did you experience? And then, were your eyes open to, like, oh man, some of these reporters, I didn't realize they're doing some things I don't necessarily like.
Yeah, it was in a few cases it was like knowing what somebody looks like with their clothes off. It's like you see them, you see
Yeah.
their work out there and go, man, this person's a star. And then when you see how they operate, it's like, wow, that was shocking, you know.
Yeah.
So, but I will tell you that and I credit Roberto Ranieri for this. He's the one who hired me at Chrysler.
Hmm.
I told him, I have no clue why you're hiring me, but I'm gonna take your money. Okay. So that's what so uh then I figured it out like on the second day,
Hmm.
a reporter called in with a question. They funneled them over to me, and then it was like, oh no, 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 no. Hey, you got it backwards. It's the other way.
Yeah.
And then got them on the right path. And when I hung up the phone, I realized I was surprised and shocked and humbled
Yeah.
that these people were listening to me. They would hear me out and trust me and listen to me.
Yeah.
So that uh, was a wonderful side of the relationship. So I don't think the relationship changed so much
Yeah.
in that respect. You know, they didn't I don't they didn't always agree with me,
Yeah.
and because of that, they didn't always get it right. But that's the game we're in. You
Oh,
know.
sure.
So, but I yeah, I don't think the funniest thing. I think I surprised a lot of people
Yeah.
when I went over
Mhm.
because I think I viewed myself as a an ink-stained wretch, who was gonna be doing the job forever, and that was my vision, right? And
Right.
then when I made the move, Paul Eisenstein said,
Yes.
"This is like in the Jewish faith. You're dead to me. You're dead to me," he said.
Yeah.
But
I can hear him saying that. Yeah.
he was joking, and of
Yeah.
course we still get along great. We're going out for dinner in a couple of weeks. But
Right.
yeah, I think the fact that was kind of shoulder to shoulder with these people in
Hmm.
scrums, and then a couple of weeks later I'm
Yeah.
answering questions. I think because they knew me a little bit, or they knew my background, it smoothed the way for some better communication.
Yes. Were there any, I know I had one, I'll tell you about it, but where you have an encounter with a reporter and either, the questions they asked just were totally uninformed, or you could tell that they didn't prepare adequately, say the way you might for an interview. I know the process that I go through, uh, and then sort of eye opening. I'm wondering if you had any of that, and then how you sort of handled that.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I think the most dangerous person in the world is a reporter who thinks he knows more than he really does.
Yeah.
And um, I try to work with those people, and I think um, some of them responded. My worst experiences, and I I'm grateful for this platform to be
Mm.
able to tell people
Yeah.
something that shocked me, and I will swear on the Bible that it's the truth. Is that, man, do not trust TV consumer reporters, the local TV consumer reporters.
They're on our
I
side.
encountered more scandalous, scurrilous behavior
No.
from those folks, and like outright carelessness. So my favorite story is a guy from Texas. He sent us a video of a customer uh, in his Dodge Durango, and he says, "Look what happens when I go in reverse."
Yeah.
And he goes in reverse, and his instrument cluster lit up, and the vehicle shut down. He couldn't move.
Oh.
And then it's like, give us a comment. We're going to go live with this at 5. And I said, hey, man, give it. That's not fair. And you know it.
Yeah.
Let us at least, we'll send an expert down. We'll look at the vehicle. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. So he puts it on hold. We send the guy down. There's nothing wrong with the vehicle.
Uh,
So now we have nothing wrong with the vehicle, and we have this video. What the
yeah.
heck? So I showed the video to one of our technical experts,
Mm.
and he said, oh, look, you can't see the guy's feet. I said, what are you talking about? Then he takes me out to his Durango in the parking lot,
Yeah.
and he shifts as he's turning the shifter. He
Yeah.
lifts his foot off the brake,
Okay.
And you're supposed to leave your foot on the brake when you're shifting gears. Everybody
Right.
knows. He
Yeah.
lifts his foot off, which confuses the uh, the vehicle, the
Right.
control system in the vehicle,
Yeah.
and it shuts down and causes all these lights to go on.
Ah.
So he's gaming the system. And by the way, in the backstory, he's telling the dealer, "Hey, look, if you just give me a Wrangler in trade straight up, you
Yeah.
know, I'll, we'll put this to bed and I won't talk to the reporter." Well, no, we're not going to do that. So
Yeah.
now he goes public with this problem.
Oh my God.
I had to fly down to Houston to meet this reporter
My
and
God.
demonstrate for him. I also demonstrated the same phenomenon on a phenomenon. It's not a phenomenon. I also demonstrated the same thing
Yeah.
on a Ford Expedition that had the same kind of shifter.
Right.
And I said, "You see what's happening here?
Yeah.
He's gaming you. He's trying to game us."
Right.
And this guy's response was, "Oh, okay. All right. Well, I'm not going to do a story today, but I'm going to keep an eye on these Dodge Durangos."
Oh, okay.
And yeah, and I'm thinking, you dishonest, disingenuous. I just couldn't believe what I was hearing. And this guy he went back to work as a reporter the next day.
It's
So that's the most extreme example. But I ran into other things that made me reach this conclusion that when I see these consumer folks, I turn I'm sure it's not true with all of them, but when I see their stories, I turn the TV off.
oh yeah, it's but Eric, it's I don't know if it's a product of people not um, being trained or pressure sometimes. Now, I worked in television. I worked in local news out in Arizona for a couple of years, and then I was at CNN for 20 years. And some of the pressures, especially in TV, it's different than it is in print. To just do it, and it's horrifying. It's just do it. And one of the this happened at CNN actually. CNN in the beginning was a slave to the New York Times. Whatever was on the front page of the New York Times, we had to do. And there was a story in the Times about how the Tennessee Tom Bigby Waterway in Alabama, an Army Corps of Engineer project, was a pork barrel, and no one was using it. Well, they sent me there in the middle of November to ask, and my editor said, "You have to ask, not just an editor, but like the second in charge of the newsroom, ask the guy from the Corps of Engineers why no one is water skiing on the Tennessee Tom Bigby Waterway." Well, we're there in November. It's in Mississippi, actually, and we're on a boat. It's raining. It's driving. Driving rainstorm, and everyone's shivering. And I told the guy ahead of time. I said, "I'm going to have to ask you this on camera because my boss says I have to ask you." He goes, "Oh, all right." He goes, "Well, ask me anything you want. I'll give you an honest answer if you can take it." I said, "Yes." So we're rolling, and I asked the guy. I said, "Okay, sir." I said, "Why isn't anyone water skiing right now where we are on the Tennessee Tom Bigby Waterway?" And he goes, "Well, Ed, to be truthful with you, because it's fucking cold out here." And he says, then we stay. He goes, "I know you can't use that in the story, but I'll give you a sanitized version if you want to make your boss happy." But that's, this kind of thing you're up against.
So I think the answer to your question is, I think the consumer reporters are missing the point. Yes, there are stories about companies that are not being fair to their customers. Those are legit stories.
Yeah.
But when there are instances where the customer falls down, say for instance, when I had one where a woman said she didn't get notified about a safety recall, and I looked up and we'd been sending recalls to this one address, and so she had recently moved from New York to Oregon, and how do you Americans say it, Oregon or Oregon?
Well, I'm a native New Yorker, so I say everything wrong. I say Nevada. I say
Ah,
I say, we say we'll close the lights. No, I say Oregon, but I think that people
okay,
say
so
Oregon.
she went out west
Yeah.
and these wasn't getting recall notices, and she has a failure, and it was going to cost her money for the repair. And this reporter was after me. Why don't she didn't get notices, and why don't you pay for this? And it's so when I looked into it, what happened, what we discovered was
Yeah.
that she had bought the car from her dad like for $1. Like dad gave her the car,
Yeah.
so it was in her dad's name, and now it's in her name. Well, that's unbeknownst to the company because the ownership changed. We have to get that in. Company has to get that information from the DMVs and so forth, and that takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
Uh, Dad was getting the recall notices for the vehicle his daughter has and throwing them in the garbage. He didn't
Oh
tell
my,
her.
oh
Yeah.
my God.
So that is a legit story. Hey,
Yeah.
folks, when you get these things, you got to tell your family if you give the car, or even better, if you take possession of a new car or a used car,
Yeah.
go to a dealer and say, I'm your customer now. Can you put me in your database so that I get recall notices? It's that easy. So those are legit consumer stories too. Teach these people how to be consumers,
Right.
and there's no appetite for that. The only story they want to do is, well, you see some of these outlets that they run like a thermometer, show how much money they've recovered for
Yeah. Yeah.
for their viewers over the year, and it's like, okay, that's fine, but
Hmm.
the other flip side of the coin is consumers have a responsibility.
Yeah.
That's a legit story, and you don't see those.
Jeez. So we've got just a few minutes left. This has been great. It's been so great catching up with you. So what are you going to do now that you're a retired gentleman?
So my son his name is Corey Mayne. He's in the film industry, and he and I have done a screenplay, and
Oh,
it's getting some decent pickup at various film festivals, and I might dive back into that and do some refinement. So that's one project. Uh, I've had some other people ring me up since I announced my retirement, and I'm
huh,
considering those things.
yeah.
But there's nothing pressing. I'm gonna probably look at uh, some kind of move in the coming year. But
Yeah.
uh, right now I'm just exhaling. I'm finding that
Yes.
the absolute freedom is actually quite paralyzing.
Yeah.
It's like I don't know
Oh,
what to do sometimes. So
I know what you mean. It's been
yeah.
I'm 8 years in to sort of retirement. I don't think I've ever worked this hard before. Because you know what? I'll
Always a pleasure working with you, though, man. So
well,
enjoyable.
same here. We had a great time,
You're an
and
inspiration in the newsroom. I just love being around you. So
well, thanks. Same here. It was a a wonderful opportunity. Totally, as you said, unexpected. Never intended to do anything like that, but and God bless him. Gualberto was a wonderful guy to work for, and I miss him terribly.
very sharp guy. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He very supportive of some of the wacky ideas that I had, but if some what do they say? Every success is paved with a few failures in between. You got to try stuff,
Yeah.
and but no, we had a great time. It was great work. I was so excited when you started working at FCA back then,
Yeah.
and that we finally
That was
got
a
to work
bonus to
together
get back
again.
with you. It was great. So
So, well, best of luck in your time. I know you'll find something great to do. Stay healthy, stay happy, keep the brain going. It's important to keep from turning to jello. And all right, so
someday.
Eric, so great. Regards to the family. It's been wonderful having you here on Tales from the Beat. And folks, that's our episode for this time. I'm Ed Garston, and we'll be back soon with more tales. Take care.